Want to know how Brian Kemp became governor of, or got reelected as governor of Georgia? This is a really grim story. I read this at ProPublica.org this morning. The headline, close to 100,000 voter registrations were challenged in Georgia, almost all by just 6 right-wing activists. What Georgia did when they passed the legislation that makes it a crime to give water or a slice of pizza to somebody who's waiting in a 7-hour line to vote, what they did was they also added a provision that allows anybody to challenge voters in their own county on an unlimited basis, people they don't even know. And what happens is when you challenge a voter, the voter then gets a letter from the county that says you've got to come in and prove you're who you are because you've been challenged. And so if you challenge 100,000 voters, there's going to be a whole lot of those people who either A, didn't get the letter, B, thought the letter was spam or were confused by it, or C, just don't have the time. They can't take time off work to go into the elections board and wait for 2 hours and stand in line and finally say, yeah, here's my driver's license. I am who I said I was. Put me back on the voting rolls. This one guy, Frank Schneider, he challenged over 30,000 people. 31,500 challenges. One guy. 100,000 people challenged by just 6 people. And they tell the story. I mean, this is by the way, this sort of challenge is included in the legislation that Republicans dropped in the House yesterday to secure elections in America. So this would happen in every state in the union. Frankly, I think that Democrats should start challenging people in the heavily red Republican counties, but that's a whole nother thing. But this is in Fulton County, an immunosuppressed, that's Atlanta, an immunosuppressed cancer patient had to drive nearly 2 hours round trip to a crowded hearing to defend his right to vote. At the same proceeding, a black woman likened her challenge to voter intimidation. No official in any county has yet said, yes, we found a case of voter fraud out of these 100,000 challenges. But for example, here's this guy, Joseph Riggs. He received at his post office box a 2-page letter from the Forsyth County Elections Office. I'm reading from the ProPublica piece, informing him of Schneider's, this is the guy who challenged 31,500 people, of Schneider's March challenge and asking him either to appear at a board hearing at 9 a.m. on a work day in June or to send in paperwork justifying his registration, changing his registration, or removing himself from the polls. And he worried that if he attended the hearing, he couldn't afford the Uber ride. He doesn't have a car. This is a guy who's living in poverty. He couldn't afford the Uber ride, doesn't have a car, and he does have a job, but it's a low-paying job, and it would force him to take unpaid time off work. So he just said, screw it, He tried. He said after the county elections board removed him, he doubted he could re-register. He says, I was really angry, but, what can I do? Keep in mind, Brian Kemp won the last election by 50,000 votes. This is over 100,000 vote challenges. Virtually all of them Democrats. Barbara Helm, who's, is a Democrat. I mean, you can actually buy a list of registered Democrats in Georgia and then just go through and challenge them, which apparently is what happened. Barbara Helm said she did not see the letter in her mailbox notifying her of Schneider's March 2022 challenge against her, nor did she know at first that she had been removed at that same June hearing as the one that Riggs was called to, the guy I just told you about. So in October, when she finally learned that she'd been removed from the rolls, she tried to re-register and she was told, sorry, it's too late to re-register. The window has closed. You don't get to vote against Brian Kemp in November or for Stacey Abrams. She told ProPublica, she said, I know a lot of people have fought and died for voting rights. I don't even know the challengers. And I didn't even know that the challengers and the board could do that to you. Well, they can. Now, she fought this. And even though it was too late to re-register, and they allowed her to vote with a provisional ballot. But was the provisional ballot counted? Most aren't in red states. No way of knowing. Or maybe there is a way of knowing, but ProPublica didn't have it. I mean, this is, I just shared with you basically, the first 2 pages of a 6-page report. I encourage you to read it. It's over at ProPublica.org. It's mind-boggling.